The parent-child relationship always begins with unconditional love and sacrifice from the parents. When children are young, they rely on their parents for everything, from meals to sleep, from studying to important decisions in life. Parents are the protectors, the guides, the ones who sacrifice everything for their children to have a good life. But over time, as children grow up, the roles in this relationship begin to change. Children who used to run to their parents for advice now start making their own decisions. They no longer ask their parents for their opinions on everything, and in many cases, they start to disregard or ignore their parents' opinions and feelings. Family meals that were once filled with laughter are now silent, or worse, filled with arguments. Parents who were once the center of family life now feel like a burden, ignored or even treated with disrespect. Not only does this hurt them, it also creates feelings of frustration and anger. They want to scream, to remind their children of the years of sacrifice, the sleepless nights, the times they gave up their own dreams to ensure their children have a bright future. But anger only makes things worse. Arguing and blaming do not change the behavior of children, but often only make the relationship more tense. They may feel pushed further away, and the distance between parents and children grows. But there is an important truth that many parents do not realize: anger is never the solution. Demanding respect by yelling, blaming, or nagging does not make children respect you more, but only destroys the bond and love. However, that does not mean you have to accept being treated disrespectfully. Instead of anger and blame, there are more effective ways to regain respect from your children without conflict or stress. In this video, we will share with you 6 simple but powerful actions that will help you regain respect in the eyes of your children without arguing, without demanding, and without enduring disappointment. These actions will not only help you protect your self-worth and self-esteem, but also help rebuild family relationships based on genuine respect and love. Remember, respect is not something that can be demanded, but something that is inspired by the way you live, the way you treat yourself and others. Explore these 6 tips and use them as tools to earn the respect and love you deserve from your children. Action 1: Stop seeking approval. One of the common mistakes that many parents, especially when they get older, often make is to sacrifice too much in the hope of being loved and appreciated by their children. They try everything to please their children, from giving in on important decisions to staying silent when being treated disrespectfully. They think that if they are good enough, patient enough, sacrificing enough, their children will recognize and respond with love and respect. But the sad truth is that it doesn't happen as expected. Respect doesn't come from pleasing others, but from how you respect yourself. When you are always humble, always ready to change your personal plans just to please your children, you don't make them feel superior, but you are gradually fading your personal value in their eyes. Margaret's story is a typical example. She used to be a strong, independent woman who had a voice in the family. But when she got older, with the desire to maintain harmony, she began to give in to her children in everything. She let her children decide her schedule, nodded to everything she said, and even kept silent when she was spoken to harshly. At first, she thought that this would make the family more harmonious, but in reality, the opposite happened. Her children gradually stopped taking her opinions seriously, often ignored her advice, and even took her giving up her decision-making power for granted. Margaret was no longer the inspirational, respected mother she had been, but became someone who was always tolerant, always docile, and therefore, was gradually taken for granted. Unfortunately, Margaret's situation is not unique. Many fathers and mothers are silently going through the same thing, without realizing that their limitless sacrifices are fading their image in the eyes of their children. They forget that respect is not a gift that can be earned through silence or tolerance, but rather something that comes from standing up for yourself. When you say yes, when you mean no, you are telling your child that your opinions and feelings don't matter. And once that happens over and over again, your child will get used to putting your feelings last. So what is the solution? Start by daring to say no when necessary. Saying no doesn't mean you don't love your child, it means you love yourself. Set clear boundaries and calmly say what you think is appropriate. Don't be afraid to express your opinions, don't hesitate to share your true thoughts, even if they contradict your child's. When you do it calmly and respectfully. Action 2, don't argue, lead by example. One of the most common mistakes parents make when they feel disrespected by their children is to react by arguing. They feel hurt and angry, and their natural reflex is to try to defend themselves with words, using arguments to prove that they deserve respect. But the truth is, arguing never brings respect. When you try to argue for respect, you not only lose your composure but also inadvertently make yourself look weak in the eyes of your children. You are no longer the image of steadfastness and wisdom but an easily agitated person, easily led by emotions. Frank's story is a clear example. Frank is a retired teacher who used to lead his class with confidence and authority. In the classroom, students always respected him, listened to him with attention and respect. But things were completely different when he returned home. His children, now adults, no longer listened to him as they used to. They often interrupted him when he shared his opinions, ignored his advice, and even laughed at him when he tried to explain something. At first, Frank felt hurt. He couldn't understand how the children he had raised, taught, and loved could treat him like this. And he started to react by arguing. Whenever they interrupted, he spoke louder. Whenever they ignored his advice, he emphasized his reasoning. But instead of getting them to listen, this only made things worse. The atmosphere in the family was tense, and Frank felt like an invisible person in his own home. But then one day, Frank decided to change. Instead of trying to argue for respect, he started practicing calmness. When his children interrupted, he didn't try to speak louder. When they ignored his ideas, he stopped trying to convince them. Instead, he listened, kept his cool, and spoke only when he felt it was necessary. He no longer felt the need to prove anything. He knew his worth and no longer let his children's behavior determine that worth. Frank's change in attitude gradually brought about a change in his relationship with his children. They began to pay attention to what he said, not because he was forcing it, but because they saw confidence and steadfastness in him. They no longer saw him as an old man trying to prove himself, but as a man of wisdom and calm. Respect did not come from Frank arguing, but from the way he remained calm and confident in his worth. The solution from Frank's story is clear: don't try to argue for respect. Let your actions and calm demeanor be the affirmation of your worth. When you stay calm and project confidence, your children will perceive you as strong and respectable. Sometimes the greatest strength is not the ability to win an argument, but the ability to stay calm and not let others upset your balance. That is the power of calm. Action 3, be in control of your emotions, don't depend on your child. One of the subtle but extremely common mistakes that many older parents make is depending on their children to make them feel valued. When their children grow up, leave home and get busy with their own lives, many parents feel empty, even left behind. Missing their children, loneliness, and the feeling of being forgotten gradually creep into their minds, causing them to find ways to maintain the connection. They call every day, send text messages constantly, reminisce about old memories or complain that their children don't care as much as before. Although all of this comes from a place of love, sometimes it unintentionally becomes a burden on their children, causing the relationship to become more and more distant. Helen's story is a typical example. After her husband passed away and her children grew up, Helen felt the house became strangely quiet. Every morning when she woke up, she just hoped someone would call. But when no one called, she would be the one to call first. Calling her son, calling her daughter, even her daughter-in-law, just to ask about things that weren't really necessary. She texted every day, often reminding them that she missed them and wanted the family to be together like before. But instead of feeling cared for, her children gradually became distant. They began to feel that the calls were an obligation, a pressure, not a natural connection. Helen felt this change clearly, and it made her sad and hurt, but she didn't know what else to do. One day, after feeling tired of feeling rejected, Helen decided to change. She stopped calling and texting too often. Instead, she started focusing on herself. She joined a book club near her house, signed up for a drawing class for seniors, and started going for walks with her old group of friends every afternoon. She also learned to use social media to share her daily joys, from taking care of her plants to trying new foods. Gradually, she stopped feeling the need to rely on her children's attention to feel happy. And the magic happened. At that moment, her children started to contact her. They called to ask how she was doing, curious about her activities. They started planning visits, not out of obligation, but because they wanted to connect. They saw a mother who was independent, happy, and full of life, an image they respected and loved. Helen's lesson is clear: respect doesn't come from demanding affection, but from living a meaningful life. When you show that you can still live a happy, healthy, and independent life, your children will naturally want to connect with you, not out of obligation but out of genuine love. So if you feel your children are drifting away, stop and ask yourself, am I living my own life? Find joy in the little things, engage in social activities, connect with friends, learn new things, and take care of your physical and mental health. When you create value and happiness for yourself, your children will see it and will come back, not because you need them, but because they want to be in the life of an inspiring person like you. Action 4. Set clear boundaries. One of the most common problems that many older parents face is not setting clear boundaries for their children's behavior. Out of love, a desire to maintain family harmony, or simply a fear of losing connection, they accept their children's every word and every action without ever challenging them. They let their children interrupt them in conversation, ignore their opinions, and sometimes even criticize and ridicule them in their own home. Over time, this becomes a toxic cycle where parents feel increasingly disrespected, while their children become increasingly rude and disrespectful. Robert's story is a typical example. Robert was a successful businessman who always maintained the respect of his partners and employees. But when he retired, his role in the family seemed to fade. His children grew up, had families of their own, and began to see him as an old man who no longer understood. They often interrupted him when he spoke, ignored his opinions during family meetings, and sometimes even laughed at his opinions as if they were nonsense. At first, Robert was silent. He told himself that it was not worth arguing with his children, that patience was the way to maintain peace in the family. He thought that if he kept quiet, everything would be fine. But his silence only made the situation worse. His children took him less and less seriously, and Robert himself felt a growing loss of self-esteem. He was no longer the role model his children had once looked up to, but a passive, voiceless father. One day, after a tense conversation where his eldest son interrupted him mid-sentence and ignored his opinions, Robert decided to change. He looked his son straight in the eye and said, "You have the right to disagree with my opinion, but you do not have the right to disrespect me. If you want to talk to me, you need to listen to me the way I listen to you." When his daughter criticized him for his financial management, Robert calmly replied, "I have spent my entire life working hard to get where I am today. You do not have to agree with how I spend my money, but I expect you to respect my decisions." At first, Robert's children were surprised and somewhat negative. They were not used to him being so firm and consistent. But over time, they began to understand that their father was no longer someone to be trifled with. They began to listen when he spoke, to ask for his opinion on important matters, and most importantly, they learned that respect is not something to be taken for granted. It is something that must be exchanged with mutual respect. The lesson from Robert's story is clear: respect comes only when you clearly demonstrate that you deserve it. If you don't set boundaries for your children's behavior, they won't do it on their own. You don't have to yell or argue to demand respect. What you need is calmness, consistency, and the ability to demonstrate that you know your worth. Never let love become an excuse to tolerate disrespect. Setting boundaries isn't about creating conflict, it's about standing up for your values. If your children don't respect you, ask yourself if you're allowing it. Remember, only when you respect yourself can others learn to respect you. Action 5. Stop giving if you are not appreciated. One of the biggest mistakes many parents make, especially when their children are adults, is to always be willing to give, always helping without ever asking for thanks. They think it is their responsibility, their love, their way of staying connected with their children. But what they don't realize is that when they give without being thanked, their help gradually becomes an obligation in the eyes of their children. Instead of being seen as a valuable sacrifice, it becomes a given. Children no longer see love in their parents' help, but only see it as something they have the right to ask for. George is a devoted father who is always ready to help his children in every situation. When his son needed money to buy a house, George did not hesitate to withdraw all his savings to support. When his daughter needed a babysitter, George and his wife were willing to spend the whole day taking care of her without a single complaint. Whenever his children were in trouble, George was always the first to help, whether it was financially, with his time, or simply with advice. But the strange thing was, although he was always willing to give, when he needed help, he did not receive it. One time, when he was sick and hospitalized, none of his children came to visit him right away. They were all busy with work, with their own lives. When he needed help to fix the roof, he had to do it himself. George felt heartbroken and disappointed. He could not understand why the children he had always loved and helped could be so indifferent. The truth is, George's children were not ungrateful. They were just used to their father being willing to help without asking for anything in return. They did not realize that his help was a gift, not an obligation. George had unintentionally created a habit, an expectation, where his children thought that their father would always be there when they needed him, without having to reciprocate. But one day, George realized that he needed to change. He began to limit his help. When his son called to ask for money to fix his car, George did not refuse but made it clear that this was the last time he would help financially. When his daughter asked him to babysit her grandchild, he said that he loved her very much, but also needed time off and would only watch her on weekends instead of all week like before. At first, George's children felt uncomfortable and did not understand. They thought that their father had changed, had become selfish. But over time, they began to realize that their father's help was not something they took for granted. They began to thank him for every support they received, and more importantly, they began to take the initiative to care for their father more. The lesson from George's story is clear: giving without being thanked gradually becomes an obligation. Love and sacrifice are not limitless, and they should not be taken lightly. You don't have to stop helping your children, but you need to help them in the right way. Don't give unconditionally to the point of becoming a victim. Give when you really need it, and make sure your help is appreciated. Don't be afraid to say no when you feel taken advantage of. Don't be afraid to set conditions for your help, such as requiring your child to be independent or have a plan to pay back the loan. And most importantly, don't let love become a burden to you. Help is only truly valuable when it comes from the heart and is received with gratitude. When you stop giving unconditionally, you not only protect yourself but also help your children learn the value of gratitude and responsibility. In life, love is not about giving everything, but knowing how to give properly and meaningfully. Action 6: Building a life beyond children. One of the things that seems like unconditional love but silently destroys the respect in the relationship between parents and children is that your entire life revolves around them. Many parents, after their children grow up and leave home, begin to feel empty and aimless. They used to take care of, teach, and sacrifice everything for their children, and when they are no longer needed every day, they unconsciously transfer all their attention, expectations, and emotional needs to their children. They expect their children to call every day, expect to visit regularly, expect to be considered a central part of their children's lives. But this inadvertently puts pressure on their children, making them feel constrained instead of connected with natural love. And more sadly, it is this emotional dependence that gradually makes you lose respect in your children's eyes. Eleanor's story is a clear proof. After her husband passed away, Eleanor devoted all her time and emotions to her children. She called every morning to check on them, tried to intervene in their decisions because she was worried, and wanted to be invited out and invited to visit them like before. She was always in a state of waiting to be called, waiting to be cared for, and gradually felt sad when her children interacted less. But Eleanor did not realize that her children were not distant because they did not love her, but because they felt pressured to make their mother happy. They no longer saw the cheerful and energetic mother like before, but only saw a woman who was always waiting, always feeling lonely, and that made them gradually avoid her. One day, after asking herself why the more she tried to connect, the more distant she felt, Eleanor decided to change. She joined a book club near her home, where she met new friends and shared her love of reading. She learned to use social media to stay up to date and even started a blog about her life experiences. She spent time traveling with her senior friends, trying new foods, learning Spanish, and began to enjoy life more than ever. When her life no longer revolved around her children, something surprising happened. Her children started calling, asking about her, asking her out, and taking a genuine interest in her life. Not because they felt guilty, but because they were genuinely attracted to the image of an independent, joyful, and vibrant mother, someone they admired and respected. The lesson here is clear: personal happiness is a solid foundation for others, including your children, to respect you. When you live a full life, with goals, passions, friends, and activities, you not only enrich yourself but also become an inspiring role model. Your children will see a parent who is not just there for them, but who is independent, resilient, and worthy of respect. Respect cannot be forced, but it will come naturally when you show that you love yourself, care for yourself, and don't lose yourself in the process of loving others. So if you feel like you're focusing all your life on your children, stop and ask yourself, am I living for myself? Start small, learn a new skill, reconnect with old friends, get involved. Summarize and emphasize the lesson. To regain respect from your children, you don't need to argue or demand, but need to start with the way you live and treat yourself. First, stop looking for recognition from your children. Don't think that pleasing them, giving in to every request or always putting their needs first will make you more loved. In fact, respect does not come from unconditional sacrifice, but from knowing how to appreciate your own value. Know how to say no when necessary, and don't be afraid to lose favor if your point of view is not shared. Second, be a role model instead of arguing. Instead of trying to prove yourself right by raising your voice or arguing with your children, stay calm and consistent. When you act confidently, calmly, and without being provoked by disrespect, your children will gradually recognize your value and learn to treat you with respect. Third, be emotionally independent. Don't let your happiness depend on whether your children call you regularly or ask how you are doing. Focus on building your own life with hobbies, relationships, and social activities. Call to action and closing. We hope that the sharing in this video has given you new perspectives and practical solutions to rebuild respect from your children, not through words or tiring sacrifices, but through the way you live, the way you love and appreciate yourself every day. Life is always changing, the roles between parents and children are also changing, but one thing never changes: your values. That is why we would like to invite you to share your feelings after watching this video. Of the 6 actions mentioned, stop seeking recognition, lead by example instead of arguing, control your emotions, set boundaries, stop giving unconditionally, and live an independent life. Which action do you find most suitable and touching? Have you ever experienced a similar situation? Are you applying one of these ways? Leave a comment below and share the lesson you like best. Who knows, your story may inspire others who are facing similar difficulties. If you find this video content useful, don't forget to click the like button to support the channel, leave a comment expressing your views or experiences, and click the subscribe button and the notification bell icon so you don't miss the next videos. Your support is a great motivation for us to continue bringing valuable, close content that can truly help your life and your family. Finally, thank you very much for taking the time to watch the video up to this moment. Always remember that, no matter what age you are, you still have the right to live a meaningful life, to be loved and respected for your inherent value. We will continue to accompany you on upcoming topics, from health, spirit, relationships to happy retirement, to help you build a better quality of life every day. See you in the next video with more new and practical sharing. Wishing you good health, peace and self-respect, because that is the foundation of every good relationship in this life.